And welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by the man who may or may not have sent Joe Milton highlights to Ben Johnson. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Would like Ben Johnson on my team for sure. So let's get those interviews done. Interview Steve Sarkisian too. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, the Ben Johnson stuff is crazy. I mean, he's legitimately it's the Ben Johnson sweepstakes. I've never seen someone who isn't a coach get on the market like this and just have everyone after him.
Rightfully so at this point, right? We've seen this offense over the last few years. So it is going to be very interesting to see how this plays out this offseason. But there's a long time to talk about offseason. We're talking about playoff football. It's no longer the super wild card weekend. At least I don't think they call it that stupid thing anymore. It is the wild card weekend, and we're ready for it.
Yeah, I think they did the slow fade. Like, you know how if you're with a girl but don't like her that much and you just sort of just kind of stop talking and hope it works out? That's what the NFL did with super wild card weekend.
Oh, yeah. That was such a dumb marketing thing anyways. Like, you were going to have you were going to have 7 teams for the foreseeable future. So what, you're going to call it Super Wildcard Weekend forever? Yeah, and then when you expand the playoffs again, it's going to be Super Duper Wildcard Weekend? Like, how much more can we have it?
Yes. Someone asked our biggest upset prediction. We'll get into it. We're going to preview all 6 games. We have a new way that we score it this week because there's only 6 games to choose from. So the way the scoring system works for those of you who are keeping track at home, if any of you are keeping track at home, God bless you. But the way our scoring system is going to work is we have now we're doing 14 points on the 6 games. We're essentially just betting points on each game. We have to bet at least 1 point on each game, but it's essentially a way to for us to put our chips in the basket that we feel the strongest about. So you could split them up, you could put them all in one game. So should be an interesting slate of games here, Kyle.
Definitely a very interesting slate of games. There's a lot to talk about with all these teams. I'm excited for it. And, I actually think this is going to be a really competitive weekend. I don't feel there are certain teams I feel more confident about than others, but I feel like every team has a shot of winning this week, and I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I am as well. Where do you want to start off with? Because we don't have to go in any particular order. What's the game that you're most excited for?
The game I'm most excited for? That is a good question. I mean, the game I'm most excited for, I think, is the one. It may not be the most competitive game, but this is quintessential AFC playoff football. It is AFC North battle between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. It is a huge line. I think it's the biggest line of the weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
It is,
which is interesting. I think there's a lot of reasons to justify that. And I could see a lot of the reasons for it. But still, I'm taking Steelers plus 9.5 right now, baby. I don't know if I'm not picking the Steelers to win probably, but there is no way this is going to be a double-digit win for the Ravens. This is AFC North playoff football. I just don't see it happening.
Okay. Well, Kyle, I have to say, when I said give me a game, I wasn't expecting to pick the one with the biggest spread to start the show, but that's okay. You are correct that this is should be a great it should be, it's great football. This is the Saturday night game. I mean, there's no getting around it. These 2 teams have just gone in complete opposite directions as of late, right? I mean, the Steelers have they've lost 4 straight games, and we can say they played tough teams. One of the teams that was tough was the Ravens, who beat them 34-17 just a couple weeks ago. Now, I will say there was a couple of big swings in that game. Russell Wilson they were down a score, and Russell Wilson threw a pick 6 that kind of allowed the Ravens to ice it. There was also he had a goal line fumble in that, not quite goal line, but he fumble inside the 10 as well. So if he doesn't make those 2 mistakes, it's a completely different game. Lamar Jackson also had an uncharacteristic red zone interception. So I do think that there is a chance maybe this could be closer.
Yeah, not to mention the Steelers did beat them earlier in the season. Like you said, since that game, these teams have felt like they've gone in 2 completely opposite directions. It felt like the Ravens are playing some of their best football of the season, which says a lot because I've said all year, I think the Ravens at their very best are the best team in the NFL right now. I think they can win the Super Bowl at their very best. The issue is that we haven't seen them at their very best week to week, and one of the biggest playmakers was ruled out for this game, obviously, with Zay Flowers dealing with that knee injury. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Ravens adjust, how the Ravens are able to throw the ball in the Steelers defense, which is very aggressive. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of interesting dynamics to this game that makes me worry of a 9.5 point spread in the playoffs against two rivals.
Yeah, the Zay Flowers thing is tough, I think, because he really is their best receiver by far. I mean, he's been a Pro Bowl receiver. They don't usually have that in Baltimore, right? Isn't he the first one? So like
Yeah.
that's a hard it's gonna be difficult to patch that up. Now again, this Ravens team when it's at its best is working so well. We saw last time they played, they were able to get like seemingly like 10-yard runs with ease against the Steelers team because you get the extra blocker with Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry is so good. But like again, I mean, I think the question I have is, can the Steelers get something going offensively? Because they've really struggled these past few weeks at moving the football, even against Cincinnati, who doesn't have a great defense. And I think it all, to me, kind of the key thing is, can they finally go back to getting some George Pickens plays again?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to need to figure that situation out because he obviously missed some time with the injury and, you know, wasn't very good in their last couple of games when they needed him for sure. So can they stretch the field with George Pickens again? Because that was a huge part of their offense for so much of the season, especially with Russell Wilson in at quarterback, was hitting those big plays with Pickens. And, he's going to have a tough matchup on his own right. We've talked a lot about Marlon Humphrey this season as a potential all-pro player. It was a very up and down season. It felt like for the Ravens secondary at times, like they were kind of torched a lot earlier in the season, and then they ended up top 10 coverage grade in the NFL this year. Like they definitely righted the ship as far as the defensive secondary goes because they had some struggles early on, and they've seemed to figure things out. And that feels like the game, right? Like if Pickens doesn't have a good game or it doesn't have a couple big plays, like this feels like it should be an easy Ravens win at that point.
Yeah, I think so. Let's get into picks, and then we can talk about the rest of it. So, Kyle, since I am currently leading, which it's gotten close. It's currently a 3-point lead for me as it stands right now. So this could go either way. Since I'm leading though, I'm going to tell you my pick and my points first, and then you can, because if you want to try and play off of that to try and play aggressive or whatever, we can do that. I think there is a chance the Steelers can pull off the upset. The Steelers always play the Ravens tough, it feels like. I'm picking the Ravens to win, and I'm going to put 5 points on it. This feels like a game that should go Baltimore's direction.
Yes. I agree with that completely. I think the Steelers can absolutely win it because they've done things like this before. Granted, it's been a while in the playoffs since they've had that sort of performance, but they're just a tough team. They're a tough team to play. No one likes playing them for a reason. I'm also on the Ravens, though. I still think they're too explosive. I have some concerns about the receivers in this game. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But I'm going to go with the Ravens in 3 points. I think the 3 points, I feel pretty good about it, but I still have some things I have questions about, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out.
What are your biggest concerns going into this game for the Ravens?
Just the outside receivers mostly. I think that Rashad Bateman's had a very good season. I think he's one of the leaders in the NFL in yards per catch. I think he's done a terrific job. I think it's been a huge bounce back season for him, honestly. And they have him and Nelson Aguilar, basically their top 2 receivers heading into this game. So they're going to use a lot of the tight ends, I think, to do a lot of the Zay Flowers stuff. The stuff over the middle is going to be a lot of Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. And I just have concerns if they're playing this game between the hashes. I just think Pittsburgh's defense is so good. They're going to they're going to slow down Baltimore in ways if they can't get things outside the numbers. And so I'm just going to be very curious to see if they don't have those options outside the numbers, if they can't create big plays on the outside, can they have success against this defense? That is my biggest part.
I missed a super chat. Sorry about that, Zachary. But Zachary says the Steelers have had 3 head coaches since 1969. Yeah, that's one of those crazy stats that doesn't feel true, but it is. Yeah, I understand it, Kyle. If this wasn't the Steelers, but it had the same roster, let's say this is the Toronto Tornadoes and they're playing the Ravens, and it's the same roster. Would you be more willing to bet Ravens minus 9.5?
Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but part of it is that it's the Steelers and it's Mike
Uh-huh.
Tomlin, and that this game matters. This may end up being the Steelers Super Bowl, to be honest. Like, they probably care more about winning this game
Oh
than any
yeah.
other playoff game. And
If
Steelers fans, like, if they win this game and prevent Lamar Jackson, who's might win his third MVP, from winning a Super Bowl, like, that is going to be the biggest talk of the town, I think, at this point, because I don't know if this team's going to win a Super Bowl, obviously, but they can win one playoff game for sure. And
yeah.
yeah, I think that still matters to me. I do think there's something intangible about that.
If the Steelers win this game and then get crushed by Kansas City next week, they would be the second happiest franchise after this season. The Super Bowl winner is 1, and then Steelers would be 2.
Yeah, probably. Russell Wilson, 5-year deal, $200
Yeah.
million. No.
Yeah, I think his odds of getting extended could go way up with a victory. Should be a fun game though. I like this. Someone says, "Hey Jackson, who do the Lions play this weekend?" Then says, "Just kidding, love the channel, even though you hate my Lions." I don't hate your Lions. Why does everyone think I hate the Lions? Just I have
It's
slight criticisms. I thought Minnesota would win. I was wrong. Okay, I'm just doing my best here. I'm just stupid. I don't hate anyone.
It's so funny that you you hate the Saints, but
Yes, them.
It's so funny that you picked the 14-win Vikings to win a game one time, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden you're just the biggest hater. Like, unbelievable. How dare you?
In fairness, I have said other negative things about, like, I think the Jared Goff stuff is like that's fair. I'm probably lower on him than most people, but like it's not a hater thing. I literally everyone's gonna be pumped up to see the Lions win a Super Bowl. And I think I have like some slight criticisms, and because of that, it's like I'm just a hater by default because everyone loves the Lions so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this has been I've been on Pro Dan Campbell much longer than you, so you're still catching up to me, I think.
That's true. Yeah, I was late. Okay, I was late to the party, but I'm here now. All right, I'm at the party.
So you're saying Jared Goff's not a top 5 quarterback to you?
Okay, all right. Let's move on. Let's talk about the team. Kyle, I'm going to talk about the game that I am most excited for here.
All right, let's do it.
Vikings Rams, the Monday night game.
Mm-hmm.
I just think I'm so fascinated by this. So the 14-win Vikings, who some people thought even had a chance to beat the Lions last week, crazy enough, they are going to be playing the Rams, probably in LA, could be in Arizona, given how the weather there. And if anyone's listening in that area, well, wish you the best there. But the Vikings lost to the Rams earlier this year, and I don't know how they defend this Rams team, because we saw last time they tried to blitz. Stafford's just really good at knowing where to go with the football. Brian Flores can outsmart a lot of quarterbacks. Stafford's not really one of those guys who's outsmarting. Stafford's being able to figure out where to go with the ball. Not to mention, you're leaving Puka Nacua one-on-one. He just won every single time they were in that situation. The Vikings tried to play some zone, and Stafford can do that too, because now you're having not a very good zone coverage team have to sit back and just let you come at them. We've talked about the Vikings. They're not really a most talented roster. They're just really well coached. So if you just sit back and play cover 3 zone all game, that's not a great strategy either. So I don't know how the Vikings stop this Rams offensive unit.
Yeah, I mean, they're one of the most aggressive defenses in the NFL. We've talked about this a lot. It's been a huge part of their thing. They have had some exceptional performances from some guys who were probably not viewed as exceptional players heading into the season. You look at guys like obviously Jonathan Grenard was a huge part of it. Andrew Van Ginkel has been amazingly put in Defensive Player of the Year conversations, and he's been fantastic, even though I don't know if he's a Defensive Player of the Year. Can
I say,
I don't want to take
given
it. Yeah,
Andrew Van Ginkel, be a hater here again. Like, Andrew Van Ginkel, he's a really good player. Chris Collinsworth on the broadcast on Sunday, every play, look at Andrew Van Ginkel. We get it. He's a good player.
He is good. I mean, I feel like I've talked about him for years on this thing. Like, yes. I think he's good, but he's like, I mean, now he's getting to a point where it's like, okay, now I need to tone it down, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's made some big impact plays, and he's had some. He's been impactful this season. He's been huge for them, man. I mean, the fact that the amazing thing about this Viking season is we've talked about it obviously since the beginning of the year. Is it looks like such a W what they did by letting Danielle Hunter walk and letting Kirk Cousins walk and kind of just filling out this roster. And a lot of that is guys like Grenard and Van Ginkel and even Ivan Pace, who's come back from injury and I thought played pretty well too. All sort of stepping into their roles and just exceeding expectations. So it definitely feels like the sum is greater than all of its parts is what's working for the Vikings. But yeah, I think if this Rams offense is clicking and playing at their best, we haven't seen it for a few weeks, and I think that's the one thing you have to be concerned about if you're a Rams fan. It's going to be very tough to stop because this Rams team is just difficult to stop in general. When Stafford's clicking with Nakua, with Cup, with Kyra Williams in the backfield, that's as dynamic as it get as far as an offensive, foursome. Like those four guys are really, really difficult to contain.
Yeah. The one benefit you kind of have is the Rams can't really pass protect at all. But again, with Stafford, he can prepare to blitz. And that's why you would think on paper, okay, you just drop back, play your zone coverage, and trust that your pass rush can get there. But it's like, that's not what they do. That's the thing. It's like you have to go away from what you're good at. And it's essentially like, are you better off playing to your strengths and their strengths or to your weaknesses and their weaknesses? It's such an interesting dilemma. And I imagine they'll try both. And I mean, neither worked last time. So I don't know what they'll do this time.
Yeah, I think they have to drop and protect, honestly. They have to hope that they win with 4 because, I mean, even just beyond, like I think they've gotten good years out of guys like Byron Murphy Jr., Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, even Harrison Smith back there continues to be a pretty steady presence. All those guys, I think, have been very good players in the secondary, but I don't know if they're equipped for the speed that they have to deal with in the Rams if they're just blitzing and playing one-on-one on the outside. Like, I just feel like that's a matchup problem. As much as I like guys like Gilmore, if you had prime Stephon Gilmore, I'd say, okay, put him one-on-one against Nakua and hope for the best. He can't play Puka Nakua in a one-on-one anymore. That's just not his game anymore. He's going to be very smart. He's going to make some opportunistic plays, but one-on-one, that's not his strength against a receiver that's one of the, 2 of the top 10 receivers in football at their best.
Yeah, I agree. The flip side is that the kind of what was lost in it was the Vikings offense also played very well against the Rams. Now, the Rams have a very good pass rush. That's kind of the one thing you have to look at. And they stopped the run very well the last time these two teams played. So you have to wonder if there's going to be a lot of plays on first and second, passing plays on first and second down, trying to, beat the Rams when they're in zone, things of that nature. But again, I mean, you have to think they should be able to throw the ball down the field as well on this one.
They've had a lot of success this season. They have a lot of dynamic receivers. Equally when I say like Nakua, Cup, Stafford, and Kyron Williams are really good. On the other side, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones, Sam Darnold. This is another group, and they have a much better offensive line, I might add, too. Like, this is a really good offense from number 1 to 11 on the depth chart, right? Like, that has been the big appeal to letting a guy like Kirk Cousins walk on big money and letting a guy like Danielle Hunter walk on big money is they have a lot of depth on this team. They have a lot of players that can step in and make some plays. So I really like this group overall. They've thrown the ball really well, and they've run the ball really well when Aaron Jones has been out there. So this could be a high scoring game for sure. I think the first game ended 30-20 when they played with the Rams win, and this one may be even more high scoring if it plays out. If both of these offenses get going.
Yeah, and keep in mind, it was 30-20 with only 8 possessions for each team. So there was not a lot of stops in that game. That was the game where there was the face mask no call that ended things. So, maybe Vikings could have won that game. Who knows had that call not happened. But, Kyle, here's the other thing I find fascinating. So I was wrong last week when I said that Darnold struggles against the blitz. I had it backwards. Darnold's actually very good against the blitz this season. The Rams are kind of middle of the road in terms of blitz. Do you see what happened last week with the Lions and what they were able to do and try that a bit this week and see how it goes? Or do you just say, let's trust the overall numbers of the season and drop back and play coverage?
You have to keep him on his toes because I think that was the big thing is like Darnold looked confused in the backfield, right? Like that was the big thing last week is he didn't really know what to expect play to play, and that gave him a problem. Do I think they're going to blitz a lot? Probably not, would be my guess, because I think the strength of this Rams defense, which has played well to end the season, has been this very young defensive line that has stepped up and played well, I thought. They have a lot of young players that have across this defense just all 11 guys. It's a pretty young team overall in defense. And, the strength of this team has been Defensive Rookie of the Year, Jared Verse, who's been dynamic as a pass rusher, one of the best guys at getting pressure all season. Braden Fisk is another one that's been really good. Kobe Turner obviously was a really good rookie last season. He's been very good again in his second season. All three of those guys can get after the quarterback. So I expect them to drop into coverage more, but I would say they should probably mix it up and try and keep Darnold on his toes, because that's what really seemed to work last week, was that every play it felt like he was guessing against that Aaron Glenn defense.
Let's get into predictions. Kyle, these aren't fun if you don't have an occasional upset in there. I'll go 28-27. LA Rams take it. Whether they're in LA or Arizona, I'll say that they are able to pull off the home upset here.
Yeah, it's not a bad take. I only have 1 point on this game.
Oh, yeah, I only have 1 point as well.
Yeah. I am going to take the Vikings, though. Although we just said all those reasons why we think the Rams could win and why it could be a problem. I still think this Vikings offense, yes, the offense, not the defense, which has been kind of the selling point of this team all year. I think the offense is dynamic enough to make things happen. Kevin O'Connell, I think, is a fantastic coach, a fantastic play caller. They have so many weapons on offense. I think they're going to have enough to get it done here and just make a couple big plays that make the difference.
Even though I love watching the Rams play and I love watching Matthew Stafford play, I would feel so bad for the Vikings if they lose this game and they have now multiple games in recent history where they've won 13 plus games in the season and then gotten knocked out round one of the playoffs. Like, they need this one.
They could definitely use it. It's definitely going to be interesting. I think there's so many aspects of this game that I find fascinating. Like, I don't know what's exactly happened to the Rams offense the last few weeks. Obviously, week 18, they benched everyone. You kind of throw it out the window. But the last 2 or 3 weeks before that last game, they hadn't played up to their offensive standard, basically since they torched Buffalo a few weeks ago. I'm a little concerned about that. And then I think the other aspect of it is, we talk about quarterbacks all season, and quarterback's the most important position in football. Typically in the playoffs is where you see that quarterback advantage come to fruition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are the kind of situations where you want to go and trade for a guy like Stafford compared to go cheap for a guy like Darnold. As good as Darnold's been this season, he's been fantastic. I still think if you polled everyone in America, I think there would be a large minority of people that would take Matthew Stafford in that situation. And it's going to be very interesting to see in that one-off game, can that quarterback advantage make the difference?
And it's weird too, because I think Darnold's had a better year though too, so that's why things get a little weird. Who do you trust in a big moment? There's few guys you trust more than Stafford though, so I do agree. Kyle, let's move on. 4 games left to talk about. Let's go Sunday night. Why don't we? Let's go my team. Let's talk some balls and let's talk some Bucs here, Kyle. I'm pumped up for this game.
It should be fun. This is, I was almost going to pick this one when you said pick the most game you're looking forward to most this weekend. And a lot of that comes down to, I think both of these offenses are terrific. I think both of these defenses kind of stink.
Yeah.
And so that should lead to a very chaotic and fun game. I think there's going to be a lot of points on the board in this game. I think both of these quarterbacks are playing exceptional football. If you told me who are the top 8 performing quarterbacks this season, both of these quarterbacks would be on the list for me this year for sure. And I think it's going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to seeing both of these teams go at each other. Obviously they played each other in week 1. I didn't take anything away from that week 1 game that I'm applying to this one, honestly. I think these teams are so different at this point. I think Washington is much different, obviously. That was Jaden Daniels' first game. I just don't know how much I could take away from that game and be like, yeah, I think that still applies.
Yeah, I mean, it's, Bucky Irving was kind of just like a sort of a guy who I think got 9 carries in that game. Still was the leading rusher, but was not the part of the offense for Tampa Bay. Chris Godwin was a huge factor in that game. He won't be playing. Like you said, it was Daniels' first game. I think I still always like going back and rewatching those games just to see if there's stuff. But you're right. It's to pretend like, oh, well, Tampa Bay blew him out the first time, they're going to blow him out again. There's just so much different stuff here. You're absolutely right about like the defense thing. I mean, these are 2 defenses that have just really struggled this season in both aspects of it. I mean, let's start with the lead here, Kyle. We could get Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore here, or we should. I mean, it seems like Lattimore's going to play.
Yeah, I mean, he's not listed on the injury report, so we're assuming he's going to be out there. And I mean, that's a huge thing, right? Like, I mean, as much as we like this Tampa Bay offense, if you're able to contain Mike Evans in any way, I think it gets a little bit harder, right? Like, I know that
Yeah.
these other guys for Tampa have really stepped up. You mentioned Bucky Irving, who has been one of the most explosive players in football, honestly, especially for a rookie. He's been awesome. We've seen some big Jalen McMillan plays the last few weeks. He's been a huge part of the offense, especially since Chris Godwin's come out. Even a guy like Kate Otten, I think, is involved a lot at the tight end position. Like, they have other options to go to, but a lot of it is focused on the idea of Mike Evans is getting a lot of attention or Mike Evans is getting 120, 125 yards a game.
Right. The one thing I would say is like, so obviously I'm going to say this because I'm a Tampa Bay fan, but I do think it is true, which is there is a bit of the narrative doesn't fully tell the whole story of the Lattimore versus Evans stuff. Usually the Saints will have a safety over the top of Mike Evans. They usually don't just put him one-on-one and say, go. That's just what the Saints do. They play cover 2-man. And Lattimore, essentially, if he's not getting beat deep with Evans, he's not giving up anything with Evans. Evans has got him a few times down the field. In their, again, they played each other a ton. You would assume he didn't get beat every single time, right? But that is kind of the one way Evans can win. And you do wonder, do the Commanders go in and try that? I think Baker would throw one up there, and who knows who comes down with it, basically.
Yeah, not to mention the safeties aren't very good for Washington. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are not a lot of
yeah. I was gonna say not a lot of great. There's a couple players I like with this Commanders defense, but it's not very good across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I like their linebackers. That's about it. It is it's a different dynamic than the Saints, who had some of the best safeties in the league over those years too. So yeah, I just think they should definitely take their shots downfield if there's opportunities for it. It'll be interesting to see if Washington kind of adopts that cover 2-man approach and tries to play basically Saints football on defense. I think there's some logic to it, but at the same time, you're still leaving yourself exposed in other areas, and can your other guys win man-to-man coverage on the other spots? That's the big part of this. Like, as much as I like some of these players on the linebacker room and all that, can they contain Bucky Irving if they're in a man-to-man situation? That's my big issue.
Yeah, and the flip side of this, before we get to the other side of the ball, which again, both offenses have a big advantage here. The Commanders can't stop the run at all. This Buccaneers team's been awesome running the football. I mean, that's part of the issue. I think if you're a Commanders fan, even if you can stop Evans one-on-one with Lattimore, can you stop the run? And does Tampa Bay just run all over you?
Mm-hmm. And Tampa does have a good offensive line in a lot of places. Especially, I think Barton's played better throughout the season, so I think having him play better has been a big part of that as well. And yeah, I think that is a huge part of it. Like, they have these rotating backs. You have Rashad White, who is a good blocking back and still does some good things on the ground too. You have Bucky Irving, who is explosive. And then, I mean, heck, you can even throw Sean Tucker in there, and I think he'd get yards in this game. So I think that is a huge part of this game, because I think Tampa Bay can absolutely run the ball in Washington. And then we're going to talk about Washington. I have some concerns about them running the ball in this game, unless it's Jaden Daniels playing Superman, which is going to be the huge part of this. I think the huge difference in this game for me. So going to be very interesting to see that back and forth with these two teams. And I think Tampa has that massive advantage that should play a huge part.
Well, let's talk about that now. The Buccaneers do have, they have Vita Vea in the middle, right? They can stop the run, even if their numbers overall might fluctuate week in and week out. If you're going to try and run on them consistently, Todd Bowles is usually going to figure something out. He can make adjustments. He does a lot of run blitzing, which can help out with that stuff. Granted, Commanders have ran the ball very well this season. I'm not saying that you can shut it down necessarily, but you do have to wonder if you're going to completely just focus on the running game. Usually that's not the way you've beaten Tampa Bay since Todd Bowles has gotten there.
Right. Yeah, it's a different dynamic, but of course, the big part about it is basically this team doesn't run the ball conventionally. That's the big part of it. Like, yes, they're not going to be able to run the ball straight at Vea up the middle and hope that they beat Vea in the middle, right? That's just not going to happen. But the fact that they have these Jaden Daniels plays where he can get to the edge, he can evade pass rushers in the pocket and scramble, and that is the bulk of their running game, is him being able to make plays with his legs, make plays on the outside. That, yeah, I think Tampa has that advantage, but he's also such a difference maker that it's going to make it a lot harder for Tampa Bay to just say, we're going to contain the run game. You're going to have to be very, very disciplined as a Tampa Bay defense to contain Jaden Daniels and try and keep him in the pocket, which is not an easy thing to do. He is so good at getting out of the pocket and getting out of situations and making plays with his legs no matter what.
That Daniels is the complete X factor in all of this, and
Mm-hmm.
he quite frankly terrifies me as someone who's rooting for the team playing against him because. It's not just Vea too. It's also Levante David. That kind of those two guys up the middle just help out the running game so much. But Daniels can make anyone miss, and Daniels has this incredible explosive ability. And when you have a running quarterback, it gives you an extra blocker. It makes it that much more possible to run the ball. So we have seen like the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson have success at times. Again, they have success against every NFC team except for the Eagles this season. But still, that's the X factor as well. So yeah, I mean, in the last time these teams played, while Daniels struggled in the passing game, his scrambling was just such a huge factor. And if the Commanders win, it's going to be in part because of I think like they need like 80 rushing yards from Daniels, or at least like 70 rushing yards from Daniels to win this game. And I don't think it's crazy to get that.
Yeah. The biggest part of this Tampa Bay defense this week is going to be true. I guess I'll ask you this one. I won't say this is my opinion. It kind of is my opinion, but let me see if you verify. Is Yaya Diaby and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, or Shaq Barrett, I guess, if he plays, is that the biggest part of this Tampa Bay defense this week? Those are the most important players to winning this game.
Maybe. I get the point. I mean, I guess there's the most variance between those. Like, Vea is going to play well. Levante David's going to play well. That safeties aren't going to play well. Well, actually, we don't even know. I mean, it looks like Winfield might be back, but yeah, I think that's really important. And for those guys who have gotten a lot of criticism this year for how they rush the passer, being like they don't, they're very good run defenders. Again, that's kind of the Todd Bowles thing, right? Is if you can't stop the run, you can't play. They can stop the run. So it's the weird thing. This is why football is such a weird sport, where Joe Tryon-Shoyinka has basically been completely written off as a bust. Like, he hasn't lived up to what you want him to do. But now he's like uniquely a useful player in this game because he is athletic off the edge. So like, football is a weird sport.
And he's so athletic. He's the kind of guy that you could say like he could actually like catch Jaden Daniels in these situations, but he has to stay disciplined. Like you said, he has to keep his containment. He has to keep him on the inside and force him up the middle. I mean, that is the huge part of it. But Daniels is just so difficult to contain at all times. He is always looking for opportunities to make plays. And that is the big factor in this game. I mean, we've done a lot of Jaden Daniels this season. He's fantastic. I think he was a top 5 MVP candidate this season. The issue with this, like, if you told me on the surface to look at these rosters and pick a team, it's Tampa. Tampa Bay should win this game. That is my opinion. But I continue to say it. The reason why Washington is fascinating and why I want to see them in the playoffs, they felt all season like a team a year ahead of schedule. They're still missing some really key components of really good teams on both sides of the ball, in my opinion. But the reason why they have a shot in all these games, as we talked about the quarterback variance with the Rams and Vikings, is they had the best quarterback in the NFC this season. He's been the best quarterback in the NFC. He's so dynamic. He drops every ball downfield is almost perfectly thrown. He's so athletic. Everything about him is so dynamic, and it's difficult to contain. That is the huge factor for Washington in winning this game, is that he can win this game on his own.
We'll also talk about the passing game for the Commanders before we move on. Terry McLaurin only had 17 yards the first time these two teams played. There were some opportunities, I thought, for him when I went back and watched the game for Daniels to throw it to McLaurin, and he didn't. I wonder if they make more of an effort. Jamel Dean looks like he will play. He was a limited participant. Usually in playoffs, limited participant means you're playing in the playoff game. How healthy will he be, though, was another question. But you got to figure if he has 17 yards again, it could be trouble for Washington.
Yeah, he's such a tough player sometimes, right? Like, there are games where he looks amazing and unbeatable, but then there are games he just can't get the separation, it feels like. So it is going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. And like you said, like we have maligned this Tampa Bay defense, and I think rightfully so at times throughout this season. They've struggled, but they've also they've had guys in and out, especially their two best players on defense in the secondary that's heading into the season were Jamel Dean and Antoine Winfield Jr., obviously. And those guys have missed a ton of time this year. The fascinating thing now is it seems like both of those guys are going to play. We haven't seen Antoine Winfield since December 8th. We're getting him, Dean, Edwards, and McCollum. This is the secondary that you basically went into the season a little bit more optimistic about if McCollum played well, and he has played well. So that was the big calling factor of this team. Like, if he played well, this secondary should be really good. If he doesn't play well, it's going to be really bad. But he has played well, and everyone else has just been out of the lineup. And if everyone's back in the lineup now, if we get Edwards and Winfield and Dean, does that change the kind of projections of what this Tampa Bay defense can be?
That's the question. Kyle, I'm not predicting the Tampa Bay defense to be able to overwhelm this Balls offense. I think the Commanders will put up points. I just like the Buccaneers to put up a little bit more. I'm going 28-25 Buccaneers. Only betting a point on it, though. This feels like a game that definitely could go either way, but I trust Tampa Bay a little bit in this game, which probably means they're going to get blown out because anytime I have faith in my team, it goes horrible.
Yeah. I got Tampa Bay with 2 points. Give me a 38-31 win. I think they get it done. I think both of these teams score. It could come down to last possession situation, but I think that they have enough pieces on offense that even if Evans is limited by Marshawn Lattimore's annoyance, I think they have too many explosive players.
There's a lot more try to just like if things aren't going well early on, try to get another fight going.
He should probably.
Or does Evans do that?
Get them both kicked out.
Yeah,
I think Mike Evans can't get kicked out. Marshawn Lattimore probably can get kicked out and be fine.
Yeah, maybe so. Let's move on, Kyle. 3 games left to talk about. Well, let's go to Packers Eagles. This is the only one. I think this is probably 2 teams that are. Well, I don't know. I think this could be an interesting game. Hurts is banged up, but it looks like Hurts is going to play. I think even AJ Brown got banged up somehow, but it looks like he's going to play as well. The Jordan Love thing is interesting because then he also got injured, but he was a full participant. So it seems like maybe not everyone's 100%. Everyone will be playing, except for, of course, Christian Watson, who went down. It's an interesting game, right? Because the Packers have really struggled as they've come in here, right? I mean, this has not been a team that you look at and they feel great about themselves.
No, not the best way to end the season for sure. Obviously, they kind of threw up the white flag in that last game. They were whatever at that point. But yeah, after it looked so promising after that Saints win where they dominated the Saints, obviously, and the Seahawks win, honestly. Those 2 games back to back looked so good. They even competed with Detroit just before that and looked like this team might have a shot to make a run. Then they lose to Minnesota and then lose to Chicago to end the season. Granted, both close games. They had chances to win, but I don't know what to think of this Packers team because they are 11-6 this season. They make the playoffs. Those are both successes. But as we've talked about all season, this team's losses are almost as loud as their wins. They've lost to Philadelphia, Minnesota twice, and Detroit twice. The 3 best teams in the NFC, they haven't been able to figure out. This feels like a kind of good but not great team. And they're going to need to play great to win this game because Philadelphia has played some inspired football, I think, this season, outside of losing that Commanders game where Jalen Hurts did get injured originally. They've played really good the second half of the season. And honestly, you could tell me since week 6, they've been one of the best teams in the league. So it is going to be a very tough one for Green Bay to pull this one off.
This is another game that's a week 1 rematch. This game, I think you can put a little bit more attention into how it went week 1, just because they were kind of similar teams last year. Although obviously, still a lot has changed from there. But we saw last game, Matt LaFleur was able to really do a good job at scheming up against this Eagles team. This is an Eagles team that doesn't like to get crazy with stuff, right? They kind of play what they play, and Matt LaFleur typically does a really good job at being able to kind of scheme up against this, the zone coverage stuff. The Eagles blitz 6th least in football. We've talked about Love's numbers when he's not blitzed and when he is blitzed. Love is great when he isn't blitzed. I do feel like there is maybe a mismatch there. And I think if the Packers win, it probably is with them scoring 30 points here.
Yeah, and they almost did that in the week 1 game, right? They had those opportunities. The tough thing is that just this defensive line is so good for the Eagles. So, it is very much the common Vic Fangio defense. We've talked about it a lot. They're going to keep their safeties over the top. They're going to play it's almost a vanilla style in a lot of ways, but at the same time, they're just so good at what they do that it's hard to beat and it's hard to throw on them. And if it's hard to throw on this Eagles team, it's just hard to beat because you look at the guys on the defensive line with Jalen Carter, with Joshua Sweat, with Nolan Smith. The way those guys have played this season has been really impactful, and it's not going to be as easy for Green Bay to kind of just run the ball against that defensive line and hope for the best because they have played so well, and the linebackers behind them have played so well. So, can they scheme things open? Can they attack the secondary? That's the only way they're going to be able to win this game, I think.
Kyle, let's I'll throw some PFF grades at you. The Eagles currently have the first ranked coverage unit in football, second pass rush, and second run defense. It's a good defense, this Eagles team.
Yeah, no kidding. They have been very, very good. Like I said, basically since like week 6 or so, they've felt completely dominant. It took a little bit, it felt like, for this team to kind of figure everything out. But once they did, after that bye week, they've had a huge, huge stretch. They've shut down even the Bengals, which nobody has done this season really outside of them. They've given every team it feels like fits. And there's a lot of really good players. I mean, a lot of it comes down to the development of this defensive line. Like I said, guys like, I mean, it's been everything though, right? Like they've had guys like Zach Bond that they've got on the fringes who turned into the best linebacker in football when he came to this team. They've drafted really well with guys like Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. They've brought guys back like CJ Gardner-Johnson, who struggled last season in Detroit. Everything has seemingly worked out for this team this season, and this defense 1 through 11 is really, really tough to beat.
Yeah. The flip side is their offense is also really good. This has been a very good offense. We all know about Saquon Barkley, the MVP candidate. Jalen Hurts, he hasn't been perfect all year. One of the underrated positive aspects is that pretty much no matter what coverage you throw at him, he's been pretty good regardless. Like, there's not really a key way to slow down this Eagles team. Part of it is because, like, okay, if you play man coverage, you lose because there's A.J. Brown. He's one of those guys, like we talked about with Nakua. I don't care who you're going up, who you throw at A.J. Brown, he's winning. Jair Alexander is injured, so you don't even get him in this game for the Packers. So they have to, I don't know who it's going to be, but they have good corners, but just no one can cover him one-on-one. So you're going to want to play some zone, but then you have him, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert. There's just too much. Saquon Barkley, although he's not huge in the receiving game when they play zone, but like there's just too many guys if you try and play zone coverage. I just think that no matter what happens, I just trust this Eagles offense to score a lot. Like I actually think the Packers could score a decent amount in this game. I trust Matt LaFleur in this spot, but it's just I don't think it's going to be enough.
I don't either. That is the big part of this game. Like a huge part of this game is going to be Xavier McKinney over the top. He has to basically be a one-man wrecking crew and eliminating explosive plays. Granted, he is good enough to do that, but even then it might not be enough because they could still run all over this Green Bay defense. It feels like at times they could still hit, their guys over the middle, whether it's an AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, who's been very good when he's been healthy this season. And they have a great offensive line that's helping Barkley and Jalen Hurts in the run game. So I think Xavier McKinney is going to be a huge part in trying to prevent this offense from going nuts. But at the same time, I think Xavier McKinney could have an amazing game, and the Packers still give up a lot of points. That is the big problem we're seeing with the Philadelphia defense and just their plethora of options.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious X factor too is turnover-worthy plays. Both teams turned the ball over a lot the last time they played. The Packers actually won the turnover battle by 2 in that game. Almost feels like you have to do that again to win this one.
Yeah. I mean, if Hurts makes those mistakes that he did earlier in the season, I think he's been much better about it. Obviously, the second half of the season, he only ended up with 5 interceptions, and I just think overall his care of the football improved. So I think I think the metrics would back up that interception number too, improving. I think he's been very good this season, especially with that aspect. So if they're able to force those mistakes, that is a big part of it. And then Jordan Love, I mean, he has to have a great game. Like I think that it's
is it Toyotathon or whatever it was.
I don't know if Toyotathon's still going on. We'll have to get IT checking on that one. But yeah, I think like the whole Jordan Love thing, like it just felt like all season Matt LaFleur had training wheels on this offense at times, right? Like it felt like he wanted Josh Jacobs to be involved in a lot of plays, and they wanted to throw the ball off of play action in specific situations and be as kind of safe as possible. And I just don't know if he can win that way against this caliber of team.
Yeah. We'll say as well, we probably should bring up the weather for some of these games. Looks like it'll be around 30s for this one. So that probably favors Green Bay, because if this gets too cold and both teams have to run the ball, it's probably, even though Green Bay has a good running game, it's probably over given how well Philly defends the run and runs the ball themselves.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. I thought you said that was favoring Green Bay. I was like, wait, what?
No, gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. As in, it favors Green Bay that it's not colder, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Kyle, let's do picks here. I'm going to bet on, if you can't tell, I feel confident about Philadelphia. I'm going to put 4 points on them here to win. I have I think a 30. What's my final score? I have them winning by 6. I forget my final score, but that's so I'm putting 4 points on the game.
Yeah, I got Eagles 28-17. I got 3 points on the Eagles. Feeling pretty good about it too. I'm with you.
Gotcha. Well, let's.
Points used 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I got 5 left. Okay.
Okay. As Kyle does the math here, any final thoughts here? Ready to move on to the last 2 games?
No, we're good. Let's keep it moving.
Okay, Kyle. Let's go to one that I'm going to say I think could be interesting here. Broncos at Bills. Bills are 8.5-point favorites. Maybe this is just me overthinking it. I think the Broncos have a shot here. So why don't I'm going to assume you disagree. So why don't I give you my pitch?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. My thought is this Bills defense, what do we keep saying about them year after year, is when they go up against smart quarterbacks with smart head coaches, the defense can struggle. And while Bo Nix is a rookie, Sean Payton is very good at this stuff, especially against zone coverage, which is all the Bills do. I think Payton can run a lot of these zone busters, get things open. The one thing this Bills defense has that has been good is their pass rush. The Broncos had the highest graded pass blocking unit in football this year. I don't think it's crazy we get a good Bo Nix game here.
I don't think it is either. No, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities because this Buffalo team does have flaws. And as much as I like them preseason and going as they've gone throughout the year, the last few weeks have definitely scared me a little bit more because we've seen the secondary get a little bit more exposed, it seems like, every week. And yeah, I don't think it's out of the question that the Broncos can move the ball. The question I have is, can the Broncos keep up with Josh Allen? And that's where I get lost on it a little bit.
Yeah, it's another game where you would assume that the weather matters. I feel like it kind of helps that this is a 1 o'clock game, right? It makes it a little bit warmer. It helps for the Broncos. I would think. I don't know. Maybe not. But either way, should be again around 30s. It might snow, but should be at least you should be able to throw the ball in this game. Could be a lot of wind as well, though. So that's going to be a factor in all of this. You're right. The X factor is, can they slow down Josh Allen? Here's the second part of my pitch, though. We saw what the Patriots did to Josh Allen when they played man coverage, were able to cover effectively. Why can't Denver do the same thing? They have great cover corners. Why can't they, make things difficult for Josh Allen? Every quarterback looks bad when there's no one to throw it to.
Yeah. I mean, that is a huge factor. Like, if they're able to do that, I mean, we've talked a lot about this. This Broncos team just has some interesting pieces, right? Like, you look at guys like the offensive line, like you said, has played well. You talk about the guys in the secondary. They have ways of causing some matchup problems for sure. And I think that's probably what you have to bank on. Is it just going to be enough is the question. I don't know about that, but at the same time, they're going to be able to cause some issues, I think. And I think it's really going to test Buffalo's resolve as we try and see if this team can make a Super Bowl this season. Because in theory, this is strength on weakness against strength on weakness in a lot of ways. Like, this is a lot of Broncos offensive strengths against Bills defensive weaknesses, and the Bills offensive, the issues for the Bills do not work with the Broncos strengths is what I was trying to say. And so if the Broncos can kind of minimize their impact, I think that is the factor that can make this game interesting for sure.
Yeah. I think, I guess here's my final thing is, we can do predictions in a second. I'm predicting the Buffalo Bills to win. I just feel like if these two teams get even quarterback play, I don't know if the Bills win. And that's a scary thing to be in wildcard weekend as a 2 seed.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. But
I also don't think we will get even quarterback play this game, which is why I'm picking the Bills to win.
Yeah, I would pick the Bills to win too because of that. Because they have a far better quarterback, and even with all that, like I still think there's an opportunity for the Bills to make some plays with their other guys. Like I don't know
Mhm.
exactly where Surtain's going to be deployed in this game, how that's going to work. I would assume it's probably Amari Cooper, but like we've seen these other guys, Kincaid, Shakir, Coleman, have some big plays, have some explosiveness, and James Cook in the run game, I think, has had some moments too. So I think those are the guys they're going to have to lean on and make smart plays, and then Josh Allen's going to have to bail them out when things get difficult because that's what Josh Allen can do at his best. So yeah, I still think the Bills are going to put up points, even though this Broncos defense is good. But yeah, I think that there are more problems. There are more problems for the Bills than we realized heading into the playoffs, and I think that's what's going to be interesting to see how they have those solved going into this game.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I feel like I'm just gonna look stupid where I hype this up, and then Josh Allen just like has a dominant game, and then they win by 30, and then everyone's like, "Oh, you were an idiot." But like, I just feel like there's a chance. I also think James Cook, his rushing has been very underrated this year. I brought up that Patriots game. He had a 50-yard run in that game. Those are those are the things you look at. We can do predictions. I'm gonna put 2 points on the Bills winning. Kyle, did I talk you into maybe not putting as many points on the Bills as you were thinking about?
I didn't have a lot to begin with. I am putting 2 points on the Bills as well, though.
Okay. So you're kind of somewhat with me that you feel like there's a upset potential here. I mean, there's multiple games we've already talked about that you put more points on, both Baltimore and Philadelphia.
Yeah, like, is there a chance? I think all of these teams have chances in ways. But I do think the issue I have is that, like, yeah, I think there's a chance. Like, I didn't think it was impossible for the Broncos to win this game. Like you said, this defense is good, this offensive line's good, and they've gotten good quarterback plays this season. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. But yeah, I think that they're still underdogs for a reason.
Yeah. I think this could be a fun game. I'm excited for this one. I know everyone thinks it stinks and it's a boring game, but I don't know. I think it could be hopefully we just get a competitive game.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to see a competitive game, and I guess the one thing that's going to be interesting, like you said, if there is wind, I think that's a
Mhm.
huge factor for the Bills because they have a quarterback that can throw in wind, and I'm not really convinced the Broncos do.
Mhm.
Um,
Uh-huh.
and the other part of it is just too, like, a rookie's first playoff game on the road in Buffalo, like
Yeah.
that's not easy. So
Yeah.
that is going to be a tough situation, I think, as well.
Yeah, that's tough. And I agree. And that's why you ultimately can't pick the Broncos to win. But I don't know. It is in a this hey this is why you don't have the dome, right? The whole talk about maybe do you build a dome for Josh Allen? This is why you don't, so you can beat the Broncos wild card weekend.
That's the only thing they care about, I think.
Right. This is another one. There's a couple of these games where it's like if you lose, just like pack it up. Like the Ravens are in that situation. Like the Bills are another team. Like you can't lose here.
Yeah. This would be a fireable loss, I think, for Sean McDermott, and I think a lot of heads would roll in this Buffalo situation.
Yeah. Let's move on. One game left to talk about. Another game I think could be competitive. I don't know if this is going to be a super high scoring game, so I totally get why it's the Saturday afternoon game. I mean, this is the most Saturday 4:30 game of all time. Chargers at Texans. Chargers are 3-point favorites on the road. I mean, I will say these are two very good defenses.
Yeah, they've both been very good this season. I think overall, what was the defensive rankings overall? I was just looking at it. The Chargers are sixth defensively overall, while the Texans are 10th defensively overall by PFF grades. So they've both been very good. The Texans have had some really good spurts this season, I think, especially as they come. They are very good at very specific things. They are good at rushing the passer, and they are very good in the coverage. They're 11th in both of those this season. They've had some up and downs, I feel like, but for the most part, this season, those players have been really good, and they've invested a lot in those spots. They have Derek Stingley Jr., they have Kamari Lassiter, who they drafted and developed. They have Will Anderson Jr., who's been very rock solid again this year, very very good, and of course Daniil Hunter, who is their big free agent guy. This offseason, who, well, I said it benefited the Vikings. I think he also benefited the Texans. He's been very good too. So it's just been interesting. Like at its core, this should be a competitive game. I think both of these teams have similar identities. They want to run the ball, they want to rely on their defenses, and their defenses are very much like contain the big play situations. I think that's what they kind of lean on. That being said, like this Texans team had a point differential of 0. They're the only team without a positive point differential this season in the playoffs. And they have not played good football basically the second half of the season. I think those are probably your big marks for why you're not picking the Texans.
I think if you're on the Texans, like you're probably just happy like the playoffs have started. Like you can forget about all like the regular season like stuff that's gone wrong, and you can just say, okay, we're just here, and it's just the team in front of us. Let's just try and win. The Kyle, okay, I'll do this. I'll do this again. Let me give you the pitch for why the Texans could win defensively. So what the Texans like to do is play zone on first and second down. On third down, they play man. That's typically what they like to do. The Chargers, we've talked a lot about how when you man up against them, Ladd McConkey's really good. They don't really have a ton of other guys. You know, Quentin Johnston, Joshua Palmer, those guys have both had their plays, but usually they're much better in zone. In fact, this entire team is much better when they're playing zone, with the exception of McConkey, who's great at both. Derek Stingley Jr., we saw him shut down Tyreek Hill a couple weeks ago, which granted, Tyreek Hill might be shutting himself down given some of his comments at the end of the Dolphins game. But nonetheless, Derek Stingley Jr. is an elite level corner. I kind of trust him to win that matchup pretty consistently.
Oh, yeah.
If you can get to third downs a lot, and the Texans do have a really good run defense, that's I think something you look towards. And the Chargers also, I was kind of surprised. The Chargers, the two things surprised me. They actually don't run the ball a ton. Like they run the ball kind of middle of the road this season, and like their rush EPA is 18th. So it's not like they're like as big of a run heavy team as you think. The Texans do a good job at stopping the run. They're the sixth best rush EPA. This feels like there is an opportunity to get the thirds and then be able to win on third downs for the Texans.
Yes. I would agree with those statements. Derek Stingley should win any matchup one-on-one in this game. As much as I like Ladd McConkey or Quentin Johnston, I think he's been, steady this season at times. Like, that is a different caliber of player, in my opinion, at this point. Maybe McConkey gets to that point, but he isn't right now. The big factor for me is I'm not convinced they're going to win on first and second down. As much as I like those pass rushers, as much as I like you said, they've done pretty well against the run this season. I think the big factor isn't how much the Chargers run, it's how they run the ball and how they perform their passing plays. Like, they're so good at minimizing pass rushers getting after them because they're running the ball so consistently in ways that make it difficult. It's going to be a lot of early down play action. It's going to be a lot of trying to keep the defense guessing. And if you're having guys guess at the line of scrimmage, it's going to be very difficult for the Texans to rush the passer and cause problems for Justin Herbert. So if they're able to do that and then contain Justin Herbert with those two really good tackles that they have, obviously I think I had Rashawn Slater was an all-pro for me this season. I thought he was amazing. Joe Alt's been a very, very good rookie as well. If they're able to contain those two pass rushers with those tackles and also keep them guessing with the play action, I trust Justin Herbert to make every good play in this game. And I just watched him in that Patriots game when he had time to throw. It was a perfect throw almost every time. So, I think that is going to be a huge factor for me because I think they have more answers for the Texans defense than the Texans offense does for the Chargers defense.
I completely agree. I think I think what's interesting about this is that there are clear advantages for me for the Texans defense. The downside is you're right. I don't know how to stop a second down play action. Like that's just going to get open every time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not every time, but it should get open enough.
Yeah. And, we'll see. It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out because obviously this is still Justin Herbert's, second playoff game of his career. And
that's crazy. That's crazy to think about.
It is, right? I'm not mistaken. Right. It's just that Jaguars.
The other one was the Jaguars blown lead. Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, and that didn't go probably the way they wanted either. know. It's going to be fascinating to see how he plays in this game because he struggled in the second half of that game, and it's going to be a huge thing, obviously, to win this kind of game. They have to be consistent. They have to be steady. This is a whole different dynamic. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh has come in and instantly fixed everything that felt wrong with the Chargers. But the issue I have is every bone in my body says this should be a slam dunk Chargers win. I originally had this as a 10 points of my 14 for the Chargers. I was like, they should win this game.
I think that's more
absolutely.
than you could even put on. I think only 9 is the
Yeah, I think.
maximum.
Yeah,
Uh,
I meant to say 9. Yeah, I was gonna do 9 points for a Chargers win. I was like, they should
uh,
absolutely win this game. Looking at the matchups and all that. The problem is that damn Chargers logo's on the helmet, and there's just something about this franchise that I need to see them like. They need to do it for me to get like get me to buy back in. I really like this team. I like the way that they have this matchup.
Let me give you one more thing to maybe concern you a little bit heading into this one. If you're a Chargers fan, who again, I think we're both probably going to pick them. They are the favorites to win. The Chargers, the defense has been great this season. When it's played elite wide receivers, it's at times struggled. We saw Jamar Chase go off. We saw Mike Evans go off against them. Nico Collins is coming to town, or I guess they're coming to Collins' town. He is an elite level wide receiver, and if you're not respecting him, you're making a mistake. He is someone who I think could, if you can hit some of those deep shots, which okay, the Texans haven't done a great job at dinking and dunking this season. Like they don't have a great offensive line. It's tough. But if they can get the occasional play where they have enough time, Nico Collins one-on-one matchup, which he will have those opportunities. That's how the Chargers play. Could we see him hit a 50-yard touchdown, and could that be enough to flip? But I think will be a lower scoring game.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be a huge part of it, right? We haven't seen this Texans offense perform well basically at all the second half of the season, but they still have playmakers that you have to respect. They still have Joe Mixon and they still have Nico Collins. And at times I think CJ Stroud, where everyone jumped on the CJ Stroud bandwagon and we said maybe he's not as good as the numbers would show. I think everyone's jumped off the CJ Stroud bandwagon a little too fast for my liking. I still think he's been pretty good this season, if not solid at minimum. And yeah, I think that they're going to have the opportunities to make some plays. And as good as this Chargers defense has played, and it's been very, very good, a lot of it comes down to the personnel. And you just look at, if you're just lining up dudes, it's Christian Fulton, it's Tareeb Steele, who's been a very good rookie this season, to be fair. Like, it's not your conventional elite defense when you look at the roster. Like, this roster just doesn't have a lot of those elite players outside of Derwin James, basically. So, like they're going to need a couple of those guys on the outside, whether it's Fulton or Still, to step up and make some plays because they are going to be a huge part of this game.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's like their defense is sort of built on like there's no weakness to this roster. Like what happens when you just have like a superstar go up against you? Like then maybe it doesn't matter. Then you need a star back or you can take a lot of attention. Granted, I think they could double Nico Collins and be fine, but they don't love to do that. So that's just what I think is interesting.
Yeah, the big part for me in this game is going to be I think a up and down Texans offensive line versus a Chargers pass rush that has been very good this season. The pass rush has been doing it in numbers. They've had Joey Bosa's missed his handful of games per year, but they have 7 guys who have 3 sacks or more this season. Everybody, it seems it's a very much a sum of guys is working. They work it together as a team, and it's guys like Bud Dupree, who's had a very good season, Khalil Mack, Tully, the linebacker. I'm not even going to pronounce his last name. All of those. Yeah, even guys like Derwin James from the secondary come up and make plays. So like you said, they are going to take their chances. They are going to blitz. They are going to try and make some explosive plays with their pass rush. And I think they're going to have opportunities to get after this Texans offensive line, but they have to contain it in the secondary. They have to prevent those big plays.
The one thing I would say is that, I mean, the Texans offensive line, which you're right, is abysmal. They have a guy named Kendrick Green. That's not Keon Green. That's a different guard who's now playing for them. Because they have Jack Mason's banged up. If he comes back, do you put Titus Howard back at the other tackle? Then maybe you're okay. I think just in general, I would do that for this game. Put Howard back at tackles. Then Tunsil and Howard, that's an okay tackle tandem. The interior stinks, but at least you haven't. I don't want Blake Fisher going up one-on-one against Joey Bosa. Like, that's just, you're losing.
Yeah. It's a problem. But at the same time, like, the thing that makes it so tough with this Chargers defense is they can't rush up the middle because they have guys in those linebackers and all that that can make plays. So it's not as easy to just say, okay, we're going to put our best guys on the outside. And I mean, a huge part of it is going to be containing Mack and Bosa. That is a huge part of the defense. Yeah,
I'm not saying that they can't rush on the inside. It's just that they're not winning one rep against Joey Mack or Nick Bosa if it's Blake Fisher. He will lose every single rep.
Yeah, that would be very tough.
With all due respect to Blake Fisher, if you're listening.
Has the
How
game
about
of
how
his
about when
life.
he listens for 5 years, finally gets a shout out, and it's this?
He's gonna get torched by Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. I hope he has the game of his life.
Yeah, I do too. Sure, especially if you're listening. Listen. If Blake Fisher, you're in the NFL. We're just two guys who are talking about the NFL. You're better than us.
That is fair. He is a top 1 percentile player at his position. We are maybe not top 1 percentile podcasters.
Maybe not, but we try our best. You could argue we're the Blake Fisher of podcasting. It's okay. People like us. There's people that watch the show. Like we made it.
There you go. We have one. We have at least one listener. That's for sure.
Yeah, currently 59 people listening. Oh, 60. Someone. That maybe that was Blake Fisher coming back.
Yeah, he's like, I'm tired of this.
Yeah, I think so. Kyle, if the Texans ever make the Super Bowl, we gotta like reschedule it for 4:30 on Saturday, right?
Yeah. You can't. They can't play Sunday nights in the playoffs. It's a rule.
Yeah, I think so. Kyle, it should be a great week, I think. Week 18, not super exciting. I'm very pumped up for this wild card weekend.
I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I think there's a lot of really good games. We need to do our predictions first, obviously.
Right. Yes. Sorry. I forgot about that. I have 1 point left. I'm putting that on the Chargers. How many points do you have left, and where are you going?
I have 3 points on the Chargers. I'm going 24-10. I think they win this one by double digits.
Okay. Wow. So you're not buying into all this stuff I said about the Texans. You're just not buying in at all.
No, they kind of stink. I'm not gonna lie. Like they have a point differential of 0. They made the playoffs because they play in the AFC South. Like that is basically what it is. They got 6 AFC South games. That's why this team's in the playoffs. I will be shocked if they win. I really need Justin Herbert to win too, just because like the vitriol if he loses this game is going to be nasty, and I don't want to see it.
Yeah, we could get Herbert first Mahomes again in the playoffs.
There is an opportunity for us to have Mahomes, Herbert, Lamar, and Josh Allen in the playoffs in the AFC divisional round, which means it's definitely going to get ruined this weekend. But
oh yeah, Bo Nix is winning. We get Bo Nix versus Mahomes, I guess 2.
And then CJ Stroud against Lamar Jackson.
No,
not even
Russell
the Steelers
Wilson
will win. Yeah, Russell.
Yeah. Even in your chaotic bracket, you couldn't pick the Steelers to win.
Boy. Yeah, I don't know. That somebody's gonna blow it for us, but that is we all want it. We all want those 4 guys in the playoffs. If only we can get Joe Burrow there. Maybe you can go watch.
Kyle, you didn't pick against me too much. It's gonna be tough to come back. Are you waiting for another week, maybe?
Well, the points are a big part. Like, obviously, I have some less point ones, and hopefully the Chargers win, so I don't lose points on that one. But yeah, it's this week is going to come down to Vikings Rams, and I'm not worried about what you're doing over there, how I'm going to match up with you. I just want to pick the teams I think are going to win, and we'll figure it out.
It's like when you're like you need someone else to lose and you need to win, and it's like no one allows like cell phones on the sideline. You're just going to focus on our game.
Yep, just focusing on us for sure.
Yeah. Okay, Kyle, let them know where they can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Gronin, and make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Of course, if you like audio only podcasts, anywhere you get your podcast, search On the Sideline Podcast. It should be available there. I meant to mention this earlier, Kyle. So we spent the end of last week's show debating when we wanted to do this next show because of the fact that there's a Monday night game. I feel like we should still do it Sunday night and not cover the Monday night game until later, because I feel like some people it's like commute for Monday morning and stuff like that. So let's make sure they still have a podcast for that.
Yeah, let's do it Sunday night. That's fine with me. We'll get back to it Monday morning, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so we'll do our usual Sunday night, and then we'll be back a week from yesterday. We'll do Wednesday on our Wednesday show. That's when we'll preview the Monday night game, and then or recap the Monday night game, and then preview the divisional round. Kyle, there's only 13 games left, and after this weekend, there'll be 7 games left.
Yeah. Wow. That's sad.
Yes, it is sad. So let's enjoy it while we can. Any final thoughts? You're ready to get out of here?
No, let's get out of here.
Okay. Thank you to everybody again for listening. We will see you back Sunday night at midnight Eastern. And until then, have a good one.
Peace.